Jason, what's up, dude?
What's going on, buddy?
Man, I am so thank God we finally got this together, dude. It's been a long time coming.
I know. I'm excited that we're doing this. I'm gonna just share this on my feed so people and get some people to watch it. All right, cool.
Sick.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
super. I'm super. It's funny because you make these friends on Instagram or online, that you never really meet or never talk to, but you chat with all the time.
I know.
And
That's
and
us.
you're yeah, man. You're one of those guys, and I always liked what I always liked what you did, especially when you started coming on. I always thought, who's this Tom Cruise looking motherfucker? Because you'd always have your shades on, and you'd always be like, looks like Tom Cruise in Risky Business.
Holy shit. Well, I'll take the compliment. That rocks. Oftentimes it's somebody saying, who's this asshole? But it
No,
was
not at
just a
all.
thing
No,
early
no,
on
no,
that,
no.
kind of developed into a thing. And 200 some fucking conversations
It's
later,
awesome.
why not at this
That's
point?
awesome. Well, I just wanted
Uh,
to because I know we have a lot of common friends. We have a lot of the
yep.
same friends, and I wore this shirt for my friend Cody from Studio House Designs because he
Dude.
always bitches that I never wear his tie dyes. So I wanted to wear this because he says I'm never in color. So this is for Cody if he's watching.
Man,
I
beautiful,
fucking
beautiful.
hate tie dye shirts.
Is it the fit or is it like the actual aesthetic? Like what is it? Because it's funny that you mentioned that.
I think it's my age because I'm a little older. So for me, tie dye is synonymous with the Grateful Dead and being a hippie.
Yeah.
so
Okay.
so it's and I mean, and I should preface this by saying that I absolutely like I work with Studio House Designs. They're one of our sponsors of our podcast. I wear his stuff all the time. I love Cody's designs. I love his shirts. And then when I ordered my Midsommar stuff, I ordered a tie dye shirt. He was like, "Yes, finally! I knew it'd get you into one." So yeah,
It's awesome. It's so fun. I mean, like, it's one of those things where I don't think it's aesthetically like it looks radical. I just think for whatever reason, like when I have them on, it doesn't feel like it fits. Like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
not even in like a material way. It's just like I'm like, it's just maybe not my
Just
thing. But
yeah.
Cody kills it. He is
Oh yeah,
absolutely the
yeah,
guy. And if you're looking for somebody with tie dyes,
yeah,
Studio
yeah,
House, I actually have on a Graveyard Goods right now. Cody
yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Boy, the
The two
guys are doing their
Codys.
shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I've got to say honestly, one of the things that I loved, and through the last few months, even through initially us talking about doing this episode, was looking into your music career and how long you guys were on the road and with Ozfests and different things. I almost feel like there was like maybe a promo at one point that was an Ozfest to where I discovered you guys, and that was where I got into Slaves on Dope, and being such a
Yeah.
radical thing. But through being able to look into older interviews and different things, I loved that I got to find out so much about you about music. But your presence in the film community, I think, was kind of where I wanted to bring this today. And maybe even starting us off, where do you find your love early on in life? Was it music or film? Did you have one or the other that was kind of your first pull to?
It's funny. Music was always prevalent in my house, but so was film. I was exposed to a lot of movies when I was a kid. I didn't have parents that wouldn't let me see things, you know. And I
Okay.
grew up, I was a little kid in the 70s.
Hmm.
Like I was born in 71. So, when I was 8, 9, 10, it was the tail end of the 70s, early 80s. So I was right there for the sweet spot of a lot of stuff that people celebrate and love now.
Hmm.
And I remember, like, my parents took me to the drive-in when I was probably 6 or 7, and I saw a double feature of the Stepford Wives and The Omen. You know, and
Oh,
my
man.
yeah, and my mom's a big fan of horror films too. Like my mom will come see horror movies with me. She loves, we've gone to see them before. I'll recommend stuff to her, and she really likes it. So, I think both, but really film and television really pulled me when I was a kid. And a lot of the times too. When I was younger, I was alone a lot. Like parents worked, so
Mhm.
I was a bit of a latchkey kid. I would go home and I would watch TV and I would watch movies and um, but yeah, I think my first love probably would be film, and then music was always hand in hand with it. But film is where my, I really, really love movies.
Yeah.
Really love movies.
I mean, and you hit it on the head too with talking. I mean, as far as like so many different times, and even through 80s and 90s, where music started coinciding with film. And I mean, music is in bands. Featured on soundtracks.
Sure.
And you would have like Nightmare on Elm Street, where they have the Fat Boys at the end of like part 4 or some shit. It's just like, what is going on? But you love it. I mean, it's such a cool crossover.
Absolutely. And with, I think it was guys like Michael Mann, that was really instrumental for me with when he was, he was executive producer on Miami Vice, and Miami Vice as a kid growing up in the 80s, such an influential show. And it's funny, I just picked up the whole series on Blu-ray when I was in the States.
Oh, man.
And I've been rewatching Miami Vice, and just the way they would use music in television. No one was doing that at the time. So, the look of the show, everything about it was unique. And then when they tied music in, and when they used all the Phil Collins stuff, like, I Don't Care Anymore, and all these songs that worked really, really well with the images. It's just so powerful. And now you see it all the time. I mean, every trailer you see, they'll repurpose a song and for dramatic effect, and everybody does that now. But guys like Scorsese did it a lot, and obviously Michael Mann did it a lot too. And yeah, I mean, I love when popular music and film like just kind of find each other, and it's super powerful.
Yeah, I love it. And it's kind of funny too, even through like the years, when like the earlier 2000s thing was happening, and you had like promo for like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or The Hills Have Eyes, to where it was like, you mentioned kind of repurpose, and it would be like a Johnny Cash track, but they would kind of almost like throw it back even more and slow down the tempo. And, it just kind of added like a whole other eeriness to a song that was normally energetic, like it's beautiful. I love the crossover between the two.
It's funny. I finally watched, I watched The Pope's Exorcist, which I hadn't seen. I'd had it on disc and I hadn't seen it, and I had to get the taste of Exorcist Believer out of my mouth. So I watched The Pope's Exorcist, which I really enjoyed, and then the use of music in that movie was great. I thought the use of music in that movie was phenomenal, and it was because it takes place, I guess, in the 80s. There were so many great songs that were in that, and I was like, oh man, whoever was like music supervisor on this film did a great job.
Oh man, no kidding. That was one that I
did you not
was
like
kind
it?
of impartial on.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you got to watch it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
All right.
It's surprisingly good. I was really surprised how much I liked it.
And it's one of those things too, where it's like, I mean, and you have to agree, because we're going to talk, in a little bit here about, like different things in our collections and, physical media. Right now we're in like such a time where, there's that golden age of the 80s and different, like posters and art, but there's so much cool shit that's going on, in today's world.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that, kind of takes it back a little bit and is a little frustrating is certain times where you go on and there's a movie that's just completely shit on. Like, for instance, I'll say this. I don't know if you've seen the new Pet Cemetery. People, have come out.
Not yet. It's funny. My friend worked on it. My good friend Maurice actually did a lot of the art direction on it. So I'm excited to see it. I'm gonna watch it.
It's good.
It's good. Okay, great.
I have nothing to say. I can say that the original like reboot of that came out in like 2019, I wasn't huge on. It's kind of hard, to take on that material and, try to do something, fresh or, whatnot with it that isn't going to be the original. This prequel to it and kind of Judd's story and David Duchovny.
Yeah.
Dude, it was solid. And I just like, I feel like there's different times where kind of like you mentioned with like the Pope's Exorcist, where certain, things I've read online, I'm like, I don't know, maybe, but I love hearing that it's great. And I love, one of the things I love about your channel and your work in general is, I think first and foremost, like you always go into something wanting to be a fan. And
100%,
I think that's
100%.
The same thing that I've always been too, where I don't want to go into something and hate it. I don't want to go into something and like completely shit on it.
Yeah,
So we want to go in and be fans.
Yeah, totally, man. And I'm, and when I see something that blows me away, I'll tell everybody about it. Mm-hmm. With Talk to Me, I watched Talk to Me. I got to see it at Fantasia. We do this incredible film festival in Montreal called Fantasia, and I got to see it at Fantasia. I got to talk to, both the brothers about the movie. And it really left an impression on me. And I've told so many people about it. So I think, when you have a good film, the word of mouth is always the strongest. It always has been the strongest. And when people talk about your movie and I will tell everyone about something that I enjoy. So if I don't like something, I'll just kind of not talk about it
ease
at all.
back from it.
Yeah, and I don't like to shit on stuff like even that, mention how I felt about Believer. Like, it's not something that I normally would come. I'm not one of these guys that there's other people that will do that, and that I really respect, like epic film guys. Like I like Justin and those guys. I've just discovered them a little while back, but he'll go hard to the mat if he doesn't like something. He'll be like, "This is awful," and I think that people work so hard on stuff. And there's so many people that are involved with working on film and so many aspects to it. I mean, you just sit through credits and you'll see how many people work on something. So just to shit all over people's work, I think sometimes, me personally, is not my thing. And I've never fancied myself as a critic. I'm more of a commentator, and I'm more of a just a fan. And but if I like something, oh man, I'll go everywhere. Tell everybody about it. Yeah, and I mean, just talk to me. Just this weekend, I was at a Comic-Con and I was telling all these people about it, and 3 people messaged me and they were like, "It was streaming. We got it on VOD and we loved it."
Man, so that's incredible. And it's something else too. To speak for anybody doing something original.
Yeah.
We kind of talk about the Halloween series or the Believer or reboots or remakes that happens, and I think that gets like a little bit more of like a critical attention just because it was already something. But I find myself having a harder time completely shitting on something that is a new, fresh take, new directors, trying to do something, maybe within a realm that we've been familiar with. But Talk to Me was one of those things. I think I have to go back and kind of watch because my experience in the theater was pretty tainted. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had in the theater, and I feel like that kind of affected my frustration with the movie.
People around you?
I drove probably an hour or so to the theater that was showing it, and it was like 11:15 at night. So I had driven all this way to get out here, and then it was 11:15. It wasn't until like they were having issues with the reel, they ended up getting it to where it played around, I think it was like 11:35 or 11:40, like after when it was supposed to start. Then it started playing, and then it was Transformers. They didn't even have the right fucking movie in the reel. Yeah. And we thought like maybe it was like like a trailer situation going on, or so. Anyway, I need to come back to it because there was plenty of things that I absolutely loved about it. I think maybe it was even just like a frustration over like the experience in general. Yeah. So, but somebody coming out and doing something like that, and for maybe people that are just getting into horror. As far as your experience, where do you find being a young man and meeting those lines of like, this is a little too far? Maybe I don't know if I enjoy this.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because my kids watch horror movies. They've been watching them with me since they're young, but there's some stuff that like, I watched California with my daughter, with Brad Pitt. Have you seen that? And Juliette Lewis? Oh, you gotta watch. No. Oh man, it's a great movie. California with a K. It's California with a K.
Oh,
and
I know.
And it's really good. David Duchovny's in it too.
Yep.
And it's awesome. But I watched it with my daughter. Maybe she was probably 13, and I thought she'd be okay watching that. There came the scene at the end where she just like wanted me to turn it off. She started crying. So I was like, all right. Oh. So it's funny how it really depends on what you're like. I love stuff that deals with possession. I love stuff that deals with entities and ghosts, and I love psychological stuff. And and I do like body horror, and I do like gruesome stuff and some of the over the top stuff too. But it's not my go-to.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people love the Saw franchise. I do appreciate them, but I haven't really followed them because it kind of like I was like, gore is gore, and it's cool to see when it's done well, but. It just, I don't know. So it's when you ask me, like, where do I find myself, when it comes to horror as a young man? I mean, for me, I wanted to be scared, I didn't really want to be grossed out as much as I wanted to be scared.
Yeah.
But if you could do both, if you could gross me out and scare me, and that's, The Exorcist was like that, then it's perfect,
Oh
you
man.
know?
And I think it kind of comes to a point where you have like those memories too, to where franchises like Halloween or The
Mhm.
Exorcist, or I know for years people have been talking about Jaws, and
Yeah,
I have a really hard time. I mean, that's probably my favorite movie of all time.
yeah,
Anything, any genre, and I just have a hard time thinking of somebody wanting to put their paws on that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But I mean, through years, through these interests and different things, and maybe even talking about like your time on the road with Slaves on Dope, how does that transition into kind of becoming a face for things? You start finding yourself doing interviews and being involved in fests. Like where did that happen for you?
Once I got, well, because I took a hiatus from Slaves on Dope when I had my kids, and
Mm.
I think at that point I just went into whatever job I could. It's similar. It's funny because I'm in a similar situation right now. I was in radio for almost 14 years, and I'm not in radio anymore. So I'm kind of in this place where what's my next move going to be? But I'm involved with a lot of other things. When Slaves on Dope ended for me, I was going to be a dad, and I just said, look, I got to find a way to be, I got to find a way to kind of reinvent myself. And I guess I just channeled all those passions that I had: music, film, comic books, and I found a way to kind of create this personality. But it wasn't like I sat down and said I'm going to create this personality. It just kind of happened, and I think it was just by saying yes to things, following the next indicated direction, and having opportunities in front of you and taking them. So
Mm.
being able to being able to be being able to be the guy who talks about things that I'm passionate about. I'm pretty fortunate to do that. So I think I was able to, I fell into a radio job. It's not that I really, it's not that I really wanted to do radio, but someone said, hey, they're looking for somebody at this radio station, and I did a demo for fun, and I ended up getting hired. So it was kind of a weird thing, and then that ended up being, well, we need people now that you're here. We need people to talk to people that are coming through town. So do you want to do that? And I did. So it just kind of grew. Do you know what I mean? And the and being a
It's awesome.
spokesperson, yeah, and being a spokesperson for these Comic Cons and stuff, I really, I was very fortunate to be able to be hired to spread the word about these shows because I'm passionate. So yeah, I'm really lucky. I'm really lucky. I get to work in a lot of things that I really, really like.
I don't, and I think the thing is like growing more familiar. I don't think it was ever so much a chance, or it was ever something, to where like it just fell in place because you're in a band. I think the integrity behind and the energy that you have behind like anything that you're doing is always drawing. And I, go toward like watching like your interviews or your different things, as far as like when you were doing like the quarantines and you were kind of mentioning, hey, I'm going to be doing these collaborations, and you might want to check out this video. And it's like you're very humble about it also, to
Yeah.
where all of a sudden I see the fucking thing and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how did you, I don't know. I mean, not to divulge into all that, but for anybody who hasn't seen those videos, I mean, we're absolutely incredible. And I don't know, it almost seemed like otherworldly sometimes when I'm sitting here and just like looking at some of the musicians that came in contact and kind of came together with that. But I think first and foremost, like at the foundation, it's the energy and passion that you have behind these things, and it's always fun to see what the fuck you pop up into next.
Yeah, it's just life is very fleeting. It's very short. And like just especially like the last like since last since Saturday, when all this news of what's going on right now in Israel and in the Middle East and stuff. And it's just a constant reminder for me that I'm very fortunate to live where I live. I'm very fortunate to have everything I have around me, and I just it's funny in these times, like especially the last few days, I've had so many people that have been affected by this. Friends of mine that have family that live
Mhm.
in Israel, and friends of mine that are here, and we've been talking about it, and it really makes me say I've got to try to be, as frustrated as I am with everything that's going on in the world, I've got to try to be as good of a person as I can to the immediate people around me, because that's how that spreads. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So I try to be passionate about what I do. I try to be authentic. And I try to just talk about what I know, talk about what I'm into, and try to be kind. I just try to be kind to the people around me, and I'm really lucky to do all the things that I do, and it doesn't get lost on me, So, but I think a lot of humility has to come with that too, and um, yeah, of course you can have like you can have a fucking dick measuring contest and say, well, look who we had on this cover, this. But the reality of it is just that we were fortunate that all the pieces fell into place, and people were gracious enough to say yes. There was a lot of people when we did those covers that said no, and that were too busy or weren't interested. But the people that did had a good time. Everybody was passionate about the Kings of Quarantine project, and it was a great way for my partner in Slaves on Dope and I to connect and do something fun too, and try to make a bit of a difference. And we did. We raised money for out of work roadies.
Yeah.
We spread awareness about roadie relief. They made a ton of money for out of work roadies. So it was it was a nice thing to be a part of.
And I don't want this to get too confusing because like I sit here and I'm like trying to break down how I'm like, okay, I want to talk about music and I want to talk about the road and I want to talk about all the media shit that he has and all the different things that he's, done and been involved with cons. Vocally, really quick, if we can touch on as far as within the band, when you're a young man, you're sitting down and figuring out how to sing.
Yeah.
How does that translate to you as far as were there different bands? Were there different vocalists that you kind of found yourself trying to emulate initially? How do you discover that?
I mean, once I really got into singing, like in a band, the biggest influence on me, hands down, was Mike Patton. Mike Patton from Faith No
Oh
More.
man, of
He,
course, yeah,
he
yeah.
he was the guy. He always will be the guy. And that band, it'll always be the band that means the most to me.
Hmm.
I think sometimes when you look back, like we were talking about music in my house and stuff. Like my parents listened to a lot of Motown, listened to a lot of Beatles, a lot of that formative stuff for me was people that could really sing, especially on the Motown side. Like my dad loved Marvin Gaye. We listened to a lot of the
Yeah.
Temptations, the Four Tops, a lot of folky stuff like Jim Croce, and my dad loved Dylan, and my mom loved the Beatles and loved McCartney. So
Mhm.
I grew up on a lot of that. And then and then the 80s, of course, all the, just anything that was in a John Hughes movie, I was a fan of, So, New Order, Simple Minds, obviously Simple Minds, of course, and Psychedelic Furs, all that stuff had an influence on me. But in terms of singing and actual someone who sang, there was Robert Plant, of course,
Mhm.
from Led Zeppelin. That was probably the biggest one for me at the beginning when I first started actually singing into a microphone. But when I started, when we started Slaves on Dope and started really writing, it was Mike Patton, hands down. I was so influenced by that album, The Real Thing, from Faith No More, and of course Jane's Addiction, Nothing Shocking, and Ritual, and all that stuff.
Oh man, it's funny because like even mentioning Mike Patton today versus the moment of those initial records that are coming out and him being like relevant in that band. There was like a moment where I had and maybe you have or maybe you haven't listened to the EP that Dillinger Escape Plan did with him. Do
Yeah,
you remember that?
yeah. Super cool.
Dude, that
Yeah.
was like the moment where I had to go back and I really had to dial back again to like, I need to really listen to this band. I need
Oh
to
yeah.
dig back further into Mr. Bungle.
Yep.
What an insane cat.
Well, yeah, he's a great vocalist. He's fearless when it comes to his approach to vocals, and yeah, it's interesting. And there's so many people that are influenced by him that we listen to today. Like, you listen to Brandon Boyd from Incubus. If you listen to Science from Incubus, one of their early
Hmm.
records, it's totally like Bungle, Faith No More influenced. And he'll even say it, like Patton was the guy for him. So
Oh,
Mike Patton
oh
left.
wow. I
Mike
never knew
Patton
that.
was, yeah, there's so many people that, like, especially the new metal guys,
Yeah.
that were all influenced by Patton.
I,
Um,
I think it's somebody with his talent too. It's always interesting to hear different people. Even like you say yourself versus like a Brandon Boyd and mentioning where the different influences
yeah,
go. As far as somebody saying, "Oh, I really like that they did this," versus somebody saying the effects that he did, or the fact that he had a trash can lid by his face was why I did this. Were there,
Yeah.
like, did you have different things like that in recording process that you wanted to try and see if they worked out, and
Mm,
did or did not?
not really,
No.
not really. I mean,
Okay.
I would always read about how much he would drink so much coffee, and
Yeah.
I think be, but I don't know, man. No, no, I mean, the only thing I ever did in the studio that I saw someone do when they were recording was Rollins. When Henry Rollins was
Uh-huh.
recording, he would be so energetic when he was recording, and he would record sometimes just in an SM58
Uh-huh.
or in a handheld, but he would take a good quality mic and hand hold it or hand, hold it instead of
Yeah.
putting it on a stand. He used to duct tape his headphones around to his head so they wouldn't fall off his studio monitors, like
Okay.
like the big ones like these. He would put these on and then he would duct tape them on. So I did that a couple of
Okay.
times, but that was pretty goofy.
I mean, versus those times, where do you remember, your first times as far as being in a band? Like, what was it initially singing that you kind of had the draw into doing something, or were you involved in instrumentals?
No, I've never been able to play anything. So I was always a singer. The first time I remember singing was probably 7 or 8 years old at a high school talent show. So, and I sang "Do You Want to Know a Secret" by the Beatles. So,
Yeah, that's right.
and I
Okay.
didn't sing
Okay.
it because of the Beatles. I sang it because the Chipmunks had a version of that I used to listen to when I was a kid. But that was my earliest memory singing in front of a crowd. And then really I was in a band before Slaves on Dope very briefly, and being involved, I made a switch from being a theater student to being a musician because theater was just I wasn't in a good headspace when I was in theater school,
Hmm.
and I just decided. Well, I make it sound like I made this big decision, but I didn't. I mean, I stopped doing theater school and I continued doing theater with another group, but I wasn't in school for it anymore. And then when I started getting into music, I was like, this is great. I can go on stage, I can drink, um, I can sing in a microphone, and I can get on a stage that's this high, but I still have this power when I get up there. Like, it doesn't matter where you are.
Hmm.
If you once you step on a stage and you're playing music, something happens. People look at
Hmm.
you differently. And I remember being someone who obviously had low self-esteem issues at the time was like, this is amazing. I can have a great time. People come, they cheer. You get girls. It was like, wow, this is the fucking shit. And obviously, there's a lot more to it than just that. But
Right.
yeah, music was like an aphrodisiac at one point. And being in a band, I loved being in a band. I loved being with a group of people and having a goal and being able to go after this goal and make it happen. And we were able to make a lot happen, which was great.
That's awesome. I mean, and you mentioned, which is something that sparks yeah, a thought, as far as you being in theater.
Yeah.
Was that something through school that you were initially introduced to, and kind of like an expanded idea, or your love for film?
I
How
think
did?
I think I wanted to act. I had done plays in high school, and it was the only thing I was really good at in school was theater. So when it came time for secondary studies or advanced studies like college and stuff, I was like, well, what am I going to do? I'm not going to, I'm not a business guy. I'm not going to go into science and I'm not going to go into business.
Mhm.
So what do? I'll go into the arts. And they had a 3-year theater program in Montreal. It was really hard to get into. It was really respected, called
Oh, damn.
the Dome. It was called the Dome, which was like, it's like a Dawson theater program at a college here. And I went to it, and I didn't really last there very long because I was drinking. It was right before I got sober.
Mhm.
I remember getting in, and I was so happy that I had gotten in because it was really hard to get into. And that's where that kind of, I thought for sure like I was going to be an actor. That was it. Like that was where I wanted to go. And boy, was I wrong.
I mean, I commend anybody. Like, I, was involved in theater like through school, and I thought that it was something great. But there is just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to break, it down. Like, in conversation with anybody that's an actor or involved like that in
Yeah.
film,
Yeah.
um, it's such a humbling
Oh
experience.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
seems, as far as trying and trying and going out for parts and getting things and having maybe not misled, but being led on that like, oh man, you've got this part, you're on this, and it's like next thing you know, you're fucking back to ground zero
Yeah.
again. Like it can
It,
be
it
brutal.
it is, and I think the difference between being a musician versus being an actor, usually when you're a musician, you're in a band and you have a group of people around you, so at least you have some
Mm.
support. But when you're an actor, man, you're flying fucking solo. And I feel, I feel for anybody that is in arts in any way, because you have to have really thick skin. You have to be self-assured and confident. And that's why I think you find a lot of people in the arts and in music that are extremely insecure or that can be slightly damaged, and it's their way to find a way to feel better, and
Sure.
like anything, I mean, we all have our things in life, and these our crosses that we bear and that we carry with us, but it's yeah, anyone in the arts is it's an uphill battle, man, but the reward is great when you get there. It's like anything, you got to work hard
Yeah,
with anything
sure.
you do. You got to work hard, but yeah,
I mean, and
it's tough.
you touch on too something within the music community, or I think specifically in the music community, kind of touching on the whole aspect of substance, and
Yeah.
it being something where whether it's out of boredom, like myself, being younger and being in parking lots waiting hours for a show to start or some shit and picking up
Mm,
smoking,
mm.
or just doing different things like that. But when you kind of have this moment of giving that up and moving on from that, did you have certain things, like how did your mind process this? As far as I know, some people pick up chewing gum more, or finding different beverages that maybe taste something like that, or like carbonation type, where did you find yourself as far as stepping away from, for anybody listening that needs that help?
Um, well, I got, obviously I started drinking at a fairly young age, probably around 12, and I drank till I was about 21. For me, it just replaced, it just filled the void that I always had in me, that and people always ask me, what's your earliest memory of being an alcoholic? And because I am an alcoholic, I mean, I'm just a sober alcoholic, but I'm always going to be an alcoholic, whether I like it or not. I mean, that's my label, and I'm okay with that, because I'm a sober alcoholic that today is able not to have a drink, and I hope I make it through the rest of today. And 31 years so far, I've been able to, but I never take it for granted that I'm one bad decision away from, I mean, I have alcohol in my house. My wife drinks. There's probably some pot here somewhere because it's legal in Canada, and I'm sure we have it here for guests that come. Like there's stuff in here that I could get fucked up on instantly if I wanted to, but I don't want to have any of that stuff. I'm not interested. But when I did find it, it filled the void. But my earliest memory of being an alcoholic is not picking up my first drink. It's being in the schoolyard, probably when I was 5 or 6,
Mm.
and looking across the schoolyard and being sure those people were talking about me. And that was my earliest memory of being an alcoholic. When I drank
Mm.
my first drink, and when I started going to parties and stuff, I felt I could talk to that girl. I could have a bit more personality. And it wasn't until I got sober and went to my first 12-step meeting that I got that ease and comfort that alcohol originally gave me.
Mm.
It made me say, oh man, there is another way that I can live. And I don't have to be this guy that gets fucked up all the time. And it's tough. It's very, very tough. It's tough for people that do fall into those patterns, and a lot of it is out of boredom, a lot of it is out of a horrible situation that you're in, and at the end of the day, man, you got to just whatever it is, you just got to be able to have some reflection and some self-reflection, and if you're able to have that, you're fortunate.
Mm.
But
Mm. Man.
but yeah, I'm an addict. I mean, I will always be an addict and an alcoholic. A lot of my addictions will shift to other things, but at least those things won't kill me. you know
Possibly like collecting, thank God
Yeah,
for maybe movies and
sure.
records.
That's it.
Move
That's
your
it.
energy somewhere
Right,
else.
right. It can be a little expensive and it can be scary sometimes with that, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Rather than a drink and driving somewhere and putting yourself or others, maybe even more to say at risk, versus yourself, put
yeah,
yourself in that position. Yeah, I mean it's certainly interesting, and I have tons of friends that are straight edge and have been straight edge for tons of years and different things, and I have drinks every once in a while, but I, throughout the year, normally a few times a year, have a month where I don't have any sort of, drink at all. And I kind
yeah,
of, find myself where like carbonated drinks for whatever reason kind of help. And then it's like weeks go on by, and the next thing I know, I'm not really even thinking
Yeah.
about it. So I was just wondering, if there was anything, to where, that came to mind that was, helping when those initial times came through.
Oh
But
yeah, I mean,
um,
I'll have a coffee once in a while. Like I'll have coffee once in a while. I'm gonna say I have coffee every day. But I never feel like I'm in a place where I need that to get through. Like I'm never white knuckling it where I'm at a bar and I'm like, oh man,
yeah, yeah.
like like non-alcoholic stuff is very popular now. Like I'll have the
Mm-hmm.
odd non-alcoholic beer, but I don't need to have that to feel like I need to fit in, or like I'm comfortable wherever I am,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody knows me. I mean, if you within knowing me for the first 15 minutes, I'll probably tell you that I'm sober, especially in a social setting.
Mm-hmm.
Someone will be like, "Oh, you're not drinking?" I'll be like, "No, I don't drink," and they'll ask me why, and I'll just say I'm allergic. It's the easiest thing, you know.
Sick. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think it was just important, for anybody hearing, especially being involved in like the music scene and yourself being on the road and touring and different things like that, to where that's, not, that doesn't have to be something that comes with that lifestyle. And, maybe even was painted for us for decades, as far as like, whoa, dude, like being on the road and smoking and,
Yeah.
drinking something off some chick or something, it's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be the
Oh
way that
no,
these
no.
things go. So
Yeah, no.
um,
I think
I love
there's,
that.
music has a lot. There's a lot of people have preconceived notions of what happens backstage and stuff, and
Yeah,
I think backstages now are a lot calmer than they used to be, for sure, and
yeah,
and that's a good thing. That's a good thing, you know.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And I have different things, like I was mentioning. I had a couple of things that I had written down that I kind of wanted to touch on within Slaves on Dope real quick before we get back into film, if you would. There was some time ago, and I'm trying to think of, it was for the song I Can't Die,
Yeah.
and someone was asking about a vocal effect on the clean vocals of the chorus of the song, to where how there was like a staggered vocal that wasn't pulled off. Does something
Oh
come to mind with
God.
this? This is
Mm.
very specific, and maybe I should have sent this to you
No, no, it's
prior.
okay. I mean, it's probably something that was done in the studio. I'm just trying to
Yeah,
remember this
okay.
song. Like I'm singing it in my head.
And
Yeah, there's
then
probably
I'm
some.
like listening
Yeah.
back, and I was like,
Did you hear it?
oh shit, I kind of like, I don't think so,
Yeah.
but then again, I was like, I
There were
think,
when we did that record, like Inches from the Main Line, there were people that told me that, that wasn't even you screaming. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, it's not, it was me doing everything on that record when it came to vocals. I mean, I think the interesting thing is when people dig and they find little things like Kelly Osbourne's on that record.
mhm, yeah,
She did a vocal on there, like a little part. There's little things in that album that are really really fun. But yeah, no, I don't know about this. I mean, it's probably a vocal effect that someone that maybe producer Tom Panunzio or maybe Herman did, our engineer. But
okay.
God, fuck, I don't know. Wrong guy to
Yeah,
ask.
there was mention at one point or another, as far as the band almost being a stuffing Santa.
Yeah,
is this a thing?
that was it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was. I wanted to name the band Stuffing Santa, and it never. It was not going to be happening. I was like, that's bummed out. So we were looking for a name. We were looking for a name for the band, and I like Stuffing Santa, and that's always the joke that I make with Kevin. Is like, well, we could have named our band Stuffing Santa, and I still think it's a fucking great name. I don't know why.
Oh
I guess
man.
it's my love for Christmas because I do love Christmas, but
It's absolutely ridiculous, and I did love it, and I saw that at one point or another, kind of looking through different things about the band. I was
well, I
like,
mean, it's not
oh
like we called
shit.
her we called ourselves Slaves on Dope. I mean, that was the kiss of death in a lot of places. Like a lot of people just did not like our name because they thought, well, it was slaves and then dope, and it's like, well, no. When you do a lot of dope, you become a slave to it. That was the whole point.
Right.
And we weren't slaves on dope. We were all pretty much clean at the time,
Hmm.
So, but it really came from Slaves and Bulldozers. That song, that Soundgarden song that's on Bad Motorfinger.
Oh shit. Okay.
Kevin loved that slaves part, and then he says, "What do you think about on slaves on dope?" And I was like, oh, "That's a great name." So he came up with it. I
Oh,
can't take
sick.
that
Okay.
credit. Yeah,
Okay.
but it's funny because there's been a band called Slaves that's come out. I think they're a hardcore band, and then the band Dope
Yeah.
that were really popular. I remember they showed up, and I was like, "Motherfuckers, like Dope, like that's not." But now, and then it is what it is nowadays. I mean, God, someone might just take that name in another area and start using it. Like, who knows?
Yeah,
It
right,
it happens.
right.
It happens.
Okay. I just, I had a couple of little tidbits that I wanted to touch on there too, and even within the band too. Like, did you find yourself like the term straight edge?
Yeah.
Was that something that that was familiar even at those times? As far as I know, like this was
Oh,
like a
yeah.
thing, 80s, 90s, and
I mean, for me, it was very familiar because of, liking all those straight edge bands from New York,
okay, right.
Youth of Today and Judge
Mhm.
and of course Earth Crisis. And all, there were a lot of straight edge bands, and we never considered ourselves straight edge. I just happened to be I was a sober alcoholic, so I think we
Sure.
got lumped into that a little bit. But I guess I'm more straight edge than anything. I mean, I don't eat meat. I don't drink. I'm not crazy straight edge, but I respect a lot of those sentiments.
Hmm.
It's funny because I know Walter from Quicksand, and he was such an important part of that, that straight edge movement,
Hmm.
with
Right.
Gorilla Biscuits and all those bands, um, and I don't know if any of those guys are straight anymore,
Yeah.
but it's that whole thing. Oh, did you break edge? And like, you mean did I go on a slip? No, I didn't go on a slip. That's what we call it in my neck of the woods in Alcoholics Anonymous. We call it a slip, but I guess you call it breaking edge. But at the end of the day, I think it's like anything. There's extreme people in certain movements,
Mhm.
and I think with straight edge too. You hear these stories about these kids in Salt Lake City that were crazy straight edge, and they were like, get in fights with people that were smoking cigarettes, and like it's just like it gets ridiculous. But I
Right.
mean, live and let live
Right.
and let live.
And I should make note too, because I was trying to think as far as timelines. Slaves on Dope was like earlier 2000s, to where obviously straight edge was like a 80s, 90s, and so
Yeah, well, we
yeah,
started we
I
started
I
we started in like 90. Our band started in 92. So, our first album, yeah, our first
92.
yeah, we started way 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 early. We our first show was in 1992, July, on excuse me, not 92, 93. So our first show was February 5th, 1992, 93, 93. Yeah, 1993 was our first show, February 5th,
When
1993.
did
So
Mainline come out?
Inches came out in 2000, 7 years later. Yeah,
Okay.
we put out,
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah,
okay.
but that was like, a lot of people think we just, like anything, right? Like, oh, you put out your first album, so you guys just like got together 3 months before. It's like, no, man, there was like 7 or 8 years of hard fucking work before we got that deal. We had another record deal before that. It was a horrible fucking deal that we had to try to get out of and barely got out of. And we had a lot of
Oh
things that
man.
happened that brought us to that moment but we moved to California in 1999. So,
Oh man.
yeah, so we
Okay.
had been doing it like for 7 years before we moved to California. But what was
Shit.
great was we show up in LA and it's like, look at this new band out of nowhere. And it's like, no, we're not fucking out of nowhere. We just left Canada because we were banging our head against the wall. No one wanted to give us a chance to do anything. So,
Yeah. And so I think where that like separation I think comes from, even from today as opposed to that time, was having the internet and being able to go to where you look and see an album that comes out and being able to have a Wikipedia or different
sure.
things
Yeah.
like that shit didn't
Oh,
exist.
no.
So it was like all of a sudden you're seeing a compilation, or you're seeing something, you're like, whoa, this band's like brand new,
Yeah.
and probably very frustrating for people like yourself, where it's like, motherfucker.
Well, it's not frustrating. It's just that, I mean, I remember when Muse got popular.
Yeah.
Um, I think Muse had 5 records out before
Yeah,
people started
yeah.
hearing about them.
It's
And
insane.
and in a way, it's kind of good because if you have, before you really pop and you really break as a band, if you've got, you know, 10 years underneath your belt, I mean, you know what you're doing. So it's
Mhm.
almost an advantage if you're able to hold out and do have some success later on in your career, because then you've got a bit of um, kind of experience, and you've got a roadmap on what to do. But when you're a brand new artist, and let's say you've been doing it for 6 months and then you break, oh man, that's a lot to navigate.
Yeah,
So
right.
I've always felt good for
Hmm.
bands that I've always been
Interesting.
happy for bands. Like, there's this band out of Montreal that I've been carrying their flag forever. They're called Half Moon Run, and they're starting to really get some success in Europe. And I think they're on their fourth record now, fourth full length, fifth I think with an EP, and they're starting to really get attention. But dude, from the jump, their first album was just absolutely incredible, and I knew that this band would have success, and they have had success, but the doors haven't blown open for them worldwide yet. But it's coming, I'm happy for them because I always tell them, like, on every record that you put out, and every record it takes longer for this to happen, it's just better for that band, and it's better for you guys as a band. I firmly believe that. Although musicians will think you're crazy when you tell them that, like, that means I got to wait that much longer to not fucking have to like eat ramen for the rest of my life, and it's just that's just the way it is. So
it's an interesting take. I've honestly never thought of it that way.
yeah,
Being in different shoes and kind of more of a consumer versus being in that place. But it's interesting, that you put it like that. I mean, because that's one of those things where you have some of the acts or some of the bands that, yeah, true, this is our first record. We put out a demo and we got pulled up. It's a lot to navigate. It's a lot to navigate trying to figure out fucking contracts. Some cats are like, yo, I'm not very good with numbers. Like, how the fuck do I deal with this shit after I just like wanted to be on a stage somewhere?
and that's unfortunately how a lot of bands get taken advantage of.
Duped. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the you get labels that just prey on that. They prey on, not only are you desperate when you're in a band, you're desperate for success. It's a little bit easier now because bands now don't have to rely on the big machine to record. Like back before, very few people had home studios. It almost didn't exist before digital became like the norm for recording. So you would have to raise a certain amount of money to be able to get studio time to go into a studio and record. So, it was tougher, and you would have to rely on, someone either giving you that money, you having money invested. Nowadays, you can open up your laptop, get some microphones, and you can record on your own, and you don't need a label. You can do, if you're savvy on a computer, you can do a lot of stuff on your own. So that's kind of cool for artists, but it's just a different formula. It's like anything, things change.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's something too with like the whole like home recording process that I do appreciate, out of the aspect of like being in a band. I love the fact of not having to go and going somewhere out of town or doing something, where you're having to set up this time. It's like, hey, we can get together and we can knock out drums in the basement and it actually like sounds good, But there's another part where sometimes I kind of miss the aspect of just being able to go in, do my job and walk away and not have to deal with any of the stress of like editing or any of this other bullshit.
Yeah. There's no, nowadays, if you want to be, listen, you can be an artist and you can just pay attention to art. But you have to have some business sense now, or you're just going to get taken advantage of. It's just the way it is,
Yep, for sure. I appreciate the insight here. I absolutely, it's cool having this today, just from remembering like these earlier memories of like listening to the band and kind of seeing different little blogs, MTV2, and some of the shit, and then even more so like you having the incredible shit that you have going on today, and doing radio and having the opportunities at fests and shit. It's awesome, man. It's so cool to see too. And with all of this fun, I think it kind of wraps us into the appreciation that I have for you and your love for physical media. And one thing that I wanted to do today was the both of us kind of do a newer segment called Decades of Horror, where we selected a couple of movies through the 70s, or a movie through the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s that we think this Halloween season viewers should check out. And I wanted to kind of touch on some of these. This is going to be really fun. I'm very excited. So your collection, what do you think?
It was not easy for for you to ask me like my favorite movie each decade. That's like, dude, that's almost impossible. So I picked 5.
Okay, beautiful.
And I picked I probably have more than 5, but I tried to be as like general as I can. I didn't go super deep. I'm sure some of your stuff is going to be a little deeper, but I just tried to grab stuff that jumped out at me that was influential to me in each of those decades.
Sure, awesome. I love it.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with the 70s. Let's see what. Let's see what
70s is my favorite time for horror. I don't have a copy of The Exorcist because I sold the last one I had because in anticipation of the 4K one. The 4K one that I got is ordered from the UK, and it hasn't arrived yet. It's only coming in November. So that would have been my pick from the 70s. So the next one I had to go with was definitely Amityville Horror.
Oh man, And the Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah, so the vinegar.
Yeah, we.
This is the you've seen this, right?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
like, this is to me. This is one of the benchmarks of horror. The cast, just everything about this. This is just eerie. It's classic '70s horror. I was watching The Changeling last night, and
Oh
Changeling is great, but
yeah.
this is the benchmark for me. This was the one that just terrified
Tough.
so many people, and I mean, they're still making Amityville movies all the time. So for
Yeah.
me, this one, and yeah, Vinegar's, Vinegar do incredible stuff. So yeah, that's my '70s one.
You're not gonna go wrong. One thing that I love about what they are doing and actually hated initially. So the
Yep.
first Vinegar Syndrome release that I got was a movie called The
Yep.
Suckling. All right. So I buy it, order it, get it in the mail. I'm real excited. Never had anything from them. Pop it in the player, and it was almost like the equivalent of having almost a wiped off copy of a really bad VHS. And I'm like, what the fuck did I just pay for? Like,
Yeah.
what is going on? Why does this look like this does? Now that I have gotten a couple releases and I like understood what it is that they're doing. A movie like Amityville Horror, a movie like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I don't want to see it in 4K of it being absolute clear. I
Okay.
want some of that graininess. And I
Okay.
think that is awesome that they still have that with their releases. It's like somehow clearer to where you can see, certain things that before were just completely pitch black and
Yeah.
you didn't know what it was that was going on. You're just hearing shit. But still has that quality.
Yeah. No, definitely, definitely.
Love it.
They do a great job. I mean, my favorite company that's doing 4K transfers now, probably, and it's funny, I don't think I have any of them in this stack, but Kino Lorber.
Oh
They
man,
do an amazing job with their 4K scans.
it's
But
insane.
yes, for me, '70s, Margot Kidder, of course, and James Brolin, Rod Steiger, just the whole cast is just brilliant. So
Man, oh man. And so my idea, I wanted you being able to do your favorites just out of, this is about you. This
yeah,
isn't about me. I'm going to show off some movies and some things, but, as far as for maybe like deeper cuts, but I wanted you to be able to show off, what it was that, you were wanting and you loved.
yeah.
My '70s pick I had, this is from 1970, and this is a Severin release of a movie called Blood on Satan's Claw. Have
Ooh.
you ever heard of this? Or have you ever
Never,
seen this one?
never. No, but Severin are great to bring pretty crazy stuff.
This it's certainly kind of like a deep cut. It's
Yeah.
one of those movies where prior to this my wife actually bought this for me. I had no
Okay.
idea what it was. I popped it in. It's basically it's a possession movie. There's a couple of scenes where you're going through and it's this little village. These people stumble across this kind of creepy skull that's in the hay and the grass, and from there everybody's just getting fucked, and it is terrifying. There is some awesome effects to it. Blood on Satan's Claw I chose for '70s for a movie. I think it's on Shudder
Oh, nice.
as well.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
you pull it up on there.
I'll definitely
Very
I'm gonna-
fun one.
Definitely going to leave that on leave that for the for the list, with the ongoing list that I'll never catch up on.
I know. I love it. All right, so for the '80s, this might be a tough one. I'm excited
Yeah,
to
I
see
mean,
what you got
listen,
here.
'80s is probably gonna. I mean, it's another era that there's just so many great things. But
Mhm.
for me, the '80s, nothing touches Creepshow.
Oh man,
It's my go-to. So I've got this one, of course. That's the one that
yes.
and then they completely fuck me, and I double dip for the 4K. So
Oh no,
bastards, bastards that shout and scream. They're just bastards. So,
Oh,
but yeah,
dude.
no, creep show for me.
Awesome.
And I got to, and the 4K transfer is actually, it looks really, really good, but this looked good. I didn't need to get it in 4K, but I just happened to be in a Best Buy when I was in the States, and I was like, oh, wasn't that expensive. But creep show is, I think I love it. I love the campiness about it. It also, I don't know, just for me, it was just such a special movie. I love anthologies. I love the idea of having,
Oh man.
a little bit, if you're fed up with this, well, and I find that the TV show, they're doing a great job with that as well.
Awesome.
But, George A. Romero, he was a guest at Comic-Con a couple of times. I got to actually host a screening of this at Ottawa Comic-Con, and did a Q&A with him in the audience, and it was just so special.
Oh
So
my God.
Creep show. And I know it's, I mean, there's so many things that came out in the '80s that were great. so many, but Creepshow for me is always going to be a special one.
Oh man, I love that, and I have a Jordy Verrill tattoo.
Nice.
You know,
Yeah.
Creep Show forever,
Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
What a cool movie, and that was maybe even like the introductory to me understanding the term
Yeah.
anthology.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Cat's Eye and seeing different things, but Creep Show is certainly an early memory for me too,
Yeah.
and what an awesome movie.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I
Great. Great.
we're talking Vinegar Syndrome here. This next one, kind of a creepy. They open the door to a realm and they have some monsters come in, and it's a young family, little kids. It's a movie from Vinegar Syndrome called The Cellar.
Oh yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
have you seen this one?
Long time ago. Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
this is a movie where very low key, honestly, by the cover art, I wasn't even sold. I love Vinegar Syndrome stuff. I was like, this might be, it might be whatever. Kind of, we'll just see. But there's an Indian burial ground. They end up awakening something that starts haunting the house. There's cool practical effects, monsters. This movie is fucking cool. And, for anybody who hasn't seen The Cellar, that was my choice. But for a favorite, I probably should have put like Evil Dead 2.
See, the thing is, when you start thinking about it, you're like, well,
so tough.
Yeah, I mean,
where do you
about
go?
Nightmare, and what about like it just goes and goes. So I think you just kind of pick one, and that's the one you pick. So
yep, I love it. I love it.
For 90s, I have two because this one obviously, and I didn't open it because I have it. I had it on Blu-ray, but I had to upgrade to 4K.
Ooh.
But Candyman for me for 90s,
man.
Candyman is so good. Still creeps me out. And I love this. I'm a big fan of Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got way too many Arrow limited edition hard boxes. I've got a lot of these. I got to a point where like all the Argento 4K stuff, I was buying two versions of it. Like I was buying the Art Original version and I was buying the standard version, and I'll order the UK stuff. Like I don't, it's kind of a sickness, but yeah, Candyman's great for 90s. But one thing I had to bring up for the 90s, because this is a movie that gets lost a lot in the shuffle. I'm sure you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, if you have not seen Jacob's Ladder.
Oh man, you know what?
Movie is the fucking bomb. And I actually got this through Imprint, which is Imprint are from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great movie, dude. Like this is a really, really good movie. And it's super, super messed up. If you've never seen Jacob's Ladder, you have to see it. It's so good. It's so good. And it really marked me, man. I remember seeing it in 1990. Like I was, 18 I was 18 or 19 when I saw it, and it just fucked me up so much. It's such a good movie. It's such a good movie. And it opens up the 90s decade. Like it's like from 1990, and it's just so good.
Shit.
Really good movie. Good movie.
It's funny you bring this up because somebody I just reached out to recently, who's a musician, they were talking about, hey, if we do something, as far as an interview, I also love horror. I love the movie Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this movie in so long. This would be great.
It's not that nasty thing that they have at the gym that you never want to get on. Jacob's Ladder. It's that too, but it's also a great movie. So check it out. What do you got? What do you got for the 90s?
For some eeriness, and I wanted to bring in some Canadian flavor. You know what I'm saying, brother? I wanted to be able to show a little love, and I brought in one of the movies that's probably in my collection that has crawled under my skin and never left. We have Pin.
Oh yeah, good,
you ever see it?
Oh yeah.
Like, do you know any backstory behind this movie? Is there a backstory? Did people actually make this? What the fuck is going on?
So there's a Canadian connection to that. I don't know what it is, but it's brought up a lot. A lot of people talk to me, will say, have you seen Pin? I'm like, well, of course I've seen Pin. But people will bring it up to me all the time because there is some kind of a Canadian connection to it. And I'm going to have to look into it. But it's something.
Dude, honestly, like, I think, because you have horror and you have, psychological, you have in your face, you have gore, you have something, heights. But there was something about Pin where when I initially saw this, I remember not being familiar with it even. Just, the cover art of it, like, oh, this, kind of looks interesting. And then watching it, there was just something about it where after it was done, I wanted to take a shower or somehow cleanse.
Yeah,
There was
yeah.
something about it that stuck with me even still today. It's one of the movies in my collection that I'll bring up to my wife. She's like, I'm not watching that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, we all have those movies. One of the ones I'm gonna show you at the end is one of those movies. And but yeah, no,
Ooh.
I know we all have those movies. It's like yeah. But
The 90s is a wild time.
90s was a wild time for music. It was a wild time for movies. There was so many
Yeah.
great movies that came out in the 90s that kind of got left on the back burner in a lot of people's thoughts. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of great 90s stuff. Like there's this movie called Killing Zoe that I absolutely loved. That just I don't think it's been re-released on Blu-ray, and I'm sure there's a lot now with all the companies that are actively looking for IPs that haven't been exposed or regurgitated. That's why it kind of frustrates me when I see these bigger companies just double dipping and giving you 4K stuff that they've put out like a couple of years before. Like
Hmm.
go after some of the other stuff, or at least try.
Totally.
And I gotta give a shout out to MVD Entertainment, because at least with the Rewind
Oh,
collection, they are going after for some fucking rad stuff, really really rad stuff.
absolutely.
Seeing them doing Swamp Thing and seeing them doing Ghoulies 1 and 2, and it's cool to see all that. So,
I was gonna say, I was
yeah,
trying to remember because they do the CED covers, right?
yeah, they just started that, and they're great,
So sick.
super cool, super
God,
cool.
they roll. They roll. All right, early 2000s. What do you got? I'm
Well,
excited. I
this
fucking love this.
to me, this blue. I mean, come on, Paranormal Activity.
Ah, okay. I
To,
had to read the letter.
yeah,
All right.
I mean, 2008, more than halfway through the decade, but this, I mean, obviously started a massively popular franchise, but I love underdogs. I love people that put movies out and have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And fuck, this movie made so much money, and it costs like nothing to fucking make, and it's
Right.
so creepy still.
Right.
You still watch the first Paranormal Activity, and it's so creepy. Just that sound of the hooves that are like on the floor and stuff. It creeps me out every time. So I love this,
Hmm.
and I do love Second Sight. I think Second Sight do a great
Oh,
job. Again,
man.
expensive to get here sometimes, but worth. Like I'm watching The Changeling now, which is the Second Sight one.
Okay.
And like you, probably a lot of the time they don't get cracked open until I watch them.
Right.
So I cracked it open. I was like, man, this is a nice set. And it's the same thing with this. I had actually got this from a guy that was selling his collection, so I missed it when they initially did it. And you can
Oh,
buy,
okay.
you can get Paranormal Activity on Blu-ray for fucking $3 and a film or $2.
Yeah.
But this
Yeah.
was worth it for me. I really wanted to have this set, and there's a great book that tells you all about um, the production of a movie and stuff like Second Sight does. So they're pretty impressive what they do, and just they again. I think the movie. Don't quote me, but the movie didn't cost a lot of money to make, and it made
Hmm.
so much money. I mean, and it just showed that the underdogs and the small creators can make stuff that just kills, and of course then they just totally like just exploit the whole thing and make like 18 movies that are all kind of good,
Yeah.
but yeah, I love Paranormal Activity, definitely.
I love when a movie, and this is going to tie to that movie. I love when a movie takes something simple like an alarm clock,
Yeah,
and I don't remember. It was like 3:20 or some shit like that, right? Where like
yeah.
all of a sudden every night it would happen. I haven't seen it in for so long, but I just remember like that coming up, and you're like, ah, fuck. Now I have to act like I'm cool again, and
Yeah.
not holding my breath and trying not to jump in
Oh
front of
man,
fucking everybody and making
it
an idiot out of myself. It
I
worked.
like
It
it
worked
worked,
so good.
and it's funny because like everyone was telling me about Skinamarink.
Oh yeah.
So I watched a bit of that, and I put it on late at night, and it had those Paranormal Activity vibes because it's like cameras and stuff.
Mhm.
I had to turn it off because it was late at night, and I'm like, I'm not watching this now. I'm going to go back to this later, or I'm watching it with someone because I remember how much Paranormal Activity freaked me the fuck out. So I'm not doing that again. And I turned it off. I was like, I'm not watching this alone. Nope. No way. No way. No way. Not watching it
I
alone.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet, and I think I'm kind of waiting for one of those moments where, like me and like my boy's a teenager,
Yeah.
maybe the three of us kind of cuddling up and watching something and just
Sure.
kind of
Sure.
trying it out. I
Yeah.
think I've been waiting for it
Yeah.
for that too. So I love that you mentioned that. When I think of the earlier 2000s, and you can kind of say, for anybody that's into horror, I feel like the French Extreme was a very prominent aspect of the early 2000s of different movies, not necessarily the bigger box, labels, but one of the movies that really stuck out to me and still to this day sticks out to me is Xavier Gen's
Oh,
Frontiers.
yeah.
2000, shit, I should have written this down. I'm trying to think of when this came out. 2007.
Okay.
When this movie's coming out, you have Martyrs, you have all these different movies. I felt like I wanted to mention these just because there was something to say with them, and there was something to say with horror at a time that you kind of felt like sometimes was a little, like silly or gaggy, and somebody taking movies and getting you to that line to where you don't want to see anymore,
Yeah.
and then bringing it past that.
Mm-hmm.
That was these movies.
Oh yeah.
And was absolutely brutal. The early 2000s, I mean, there were some different things too. Paranormal Activity was certainly one that, like you mentioned, maybe some of the sequels, a little here and there. That original movie was awesome.
Oh yeah, and I always enjoyed them. And you're talking about Frontiers, like there's also that movie Martyrs. That's another one that's fucked up. So yeah.
Inside.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Tough.
All right, so for the last two, you said 2010, and I guess it falls right under before 2020. But this movie to me is in my top 5 horror movies of all time, and I absolutely love this movie, and I know you do too. Hereditary.
Man.
And just so you know, that's signed by Ari Aster.
See how fast my smile went away? You son of a bitch.
I got to interview him for Beau.
Awesome.
I got to interview him for Beau is Afraid.
It was cool to see that.
I brought a stack of movies for him to sign, and I brought them in a Clockwork Orange tote bag, and I gave them to my friend Melanie, who's the rep for A24 here. And I said, "Can I get these signed?" And she goes, "Just leave them with me, and I'll get them signed at the end." And at the end of the day, she messaged me. She goes, "I have a strange request." And I go, "What is it?" She goes, "Ari wants your tote bag."
I'm like, Clockwork Orange one?
Yeah. I'm like, okay. And the crazy thing is, about 5 years before that, I interviewed Run the Jewels, and I had a Clockwork Orange tote bag, the same one. And fucking Killer Mike asked me for my tote bag. And it was the tote bag that I brought my records in to get records signed. So Killer Mike was Killer Mike was like, "I love that bag." And I'm like, "You can have it." And I gave it to him. And then I went and I found it. It's from this company called Out of Print. And then Ari Aster asked me for the fucking tote bag. So I said to her, I go, "What am I going to say?" "Yeah, you can have it." So he signed all my movies, and then A24 ended up sending me like a nice pack of stuff from Beau is Afraid, like a hat and stuff, and it was cool. But
oh man!
But yeah, so I brought
awesome.
him. I had brought him all my like I have like 5 copies of Midsommar, different ones, and I asked him to sign. And this wasn't anything special. It's just like a regular version of it. I don't think there's really a special version of Hereditary that's out yet. It's just kind of
it's like a steelbook, but
yeah, but it's nothing.
It's still the Blu-ray.
But this movie's so good. It's such a good movie.
Dude, that was one, and I think the story behind that movie for me was I spent years, and this was honestly, I mean, it was probably maybe 3 years before I'd seen the movie after its release, where I was seeing it on like, all the little ad things that come up, and it's like the top 5 scariest horror movies ever, or the top 10, you know, and they're putting it with Exorcist, and they're putting it with all these movies, and I'm just like, I don't even want to see this because there's no fucking way. I can't fall into it. It's, just a little kind of quick grab. My wife bought it for me for Christmas one year, and I started it, and it was over the span of like maybe 2 or 3 days where I was watching it, and it just was so effective.
Oh yeah.
That movie is fucking scary. That movie is awesome.
It's great. And the fact that Toni Collette wasn't nominated for an Academy Award or won an Academy Award makes no sense. And I'm just happy because since that, A24 has gotten all these accolades, with last year with Everything Everywhere All at Once and getting respect as a
Hmm.
genre film and
Hmm.
Parasite and all that. But damn, Toni Collette got robbed, man. She should get something for that because she was just the whole cast was incredible. I mean, it
Yeah, it
just
was insane.
and it's that whole thing with horror always getting ignored in awards season. They'll win best sound effects or best this, but they
Hmm.
need to be some because there's performances that happen that are impressive in horror films.
Man, yeah, that movie, I mean, is absolutely standalone. That
Yeah.
is one of those like situations where anything that he has come out with since, I am at the theater.
Yeah.
If not the first day, that first week. Like I can't miss
Oh
it.
yeah.
And
Yeah. Me
yeah,
too.
I love the interview. I mean, it was so fun, just to
Yeah.
kind of see
I
the
was
interaction and
I was so
being a
nervous
fan.
nervous to talk to him, and he was super cool though. And what I asked him, I said, hey, because I just seen Beau was Afraid the morning before, and I said, I can't wait to watch this movie again on Blu-ray. And he goes, "Oh, you buy movies?" I go, "Yeah." I go, "I have brought a bunch for you to sign that they're going to give you later." And he said, "I said, is there going to be a lot of Easter eggs when I watch it again?" He goes, "Oh yeah." And I said, "There's a scene I remember in the movie where, Beau turns and you see a picture on the wall and then you see a face in it." And he goes, "Oh, there's so much you're going to see." And I did when I got it and I rewatched it. I found all these fucking things in
Oh
Beau was
shit,
Afraid.
really?
Yeah, Beau was Afraid was great. I really like that movie. So
Oh man. I saw it in theater. I mean, I loved it. It was just a thing of it. It's an entity of
yeah,
its own. Um, but that's, one of those things too. It's always so fun with his stuff is going back within Midsummer, within Hereditary. Um, and then even some of the shorts that he's done. I mean, the
yeah.
dude has been fucking out of his mind since he's started doing this stuff.
Yeah, he's great, and I can't wait to see what's next. I can't wait to see what's next. It's gonna be interesting to see where he goes next.
Beautiful.
All these young directors. I'm curious to see where they go.
I love it. I love
So
it.
what?
My last one for the 2010s, and this was something that actually randomly popped up to me. It was an opportunity through an interview, and it has stuck with me since. Is 2019's "I See You."
Ooh, good
Now,
movie.
yet
Yeah,
Arrow.
yeah,
We're talking about some absolutely radical releases. You've seen "I See You."
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
I think it's still on Netflix. I don't know
I,
about,
I
for
think
you
so.
guys or if it's on a streaming or something. I know it was on Netflix for some time over here as well.
Do
Um,
you ever region free? You ever region free player? Yeah, I
yep.
thought so. I saw the little 18 on the corner, and that's a sobering realization for a lot of people when they order something and then they're like,
Does it work?
"This doesn't play in my player." It fucking sucks, dude. It
Yeah,
sucks. It sucks.
it was one of those things where, like finally I had to kind of set a little aside and I was like, all right, I'm going to buy a player and, not have to worry about these things, not have it just be a relic that's on my shelf.
Yeah,
But, the Arrow release, the movie, Helen
yeah,
Hunt in this, the whole cast, this was definitely one of those movies where there's an aspect that later in the movie you realize, what exactly is going
yeah,
on. And leaving my house since has always been kind of like a, out of corner of my eye
yeah.
watching. I
I know.
like
Yeah,
seriously,
yeah,
you mentioned Paranormal Activity, and I think of the alarm clock. My garage door, or just my doors in general, have been looked at differently ever since watching this
yeah.
movie. It absolutely affected me.
Dude, I hear you. 110%. 110%. It's
So
yeah, it's a
great.
scary one. It's a scary one. But I love the fact that, you know, I it's funny because for me, scary movies are like facing fears. Like you get scared, but heading into a scary movie is almost like doing something that you're fearful of.
Yeah.
And when
Oh
you
yeah.
get out of it, because it's the same thing, it's like you arrive, like okay, you got to go somewhere and you're scared to go there, right? You're fearful of like the job interview or or a social setting or whatever it is. So you arrive there and you kind of feel like you do when you go to a horror movie. You're sitting in the
Hmm.
theater and you're like, here we go, and then it starts and you're anticipating, and then you get the first scare and and then there's that sweet spot in a horror movie when you're three-quarters of the way through and it's great and you're enjoying it and you're like, bring it on, I've got this. And at the end you're like, I made it. And you're like, I did it,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like a metaphor to life. Like you go through these things and when you come out the other end, you will be okay. You just have to face the fears. And that's why I think I've always been drawn to horror, because it's a challenge. It's not like watching a sugary feel good movie that's just, like, ugh, you just sit and kind of melt in your chair and you're like, whatever. Those are good too sometimes, but
Sure.
it's great when you're challenged. And I think that's why I've always been drawn to that genre, is because I love being challenged when I watch something.
Yeah, yeah. And for anybody, who is watching, and I'll have this later on within like the next month or so on YouTube. Challenge yourself to check out some of these.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen classics like Candyman, if you haven't seen lower key movies like Pin, these are great selections, dude. I love the ones that you picked. This fucking awesome.
I went pretty standard, but I mean, I knew you were gonna go. I know I've seen you and I've seen what you post about and the stuff you're into, and that's why I love this community, is that we all learn from each other. There's been stuff that you pulled up and I'm like, shit, I got to see that. And it's the worst thing is when someone goes, oh yeah, I know that. Like, no, it's okay to not know something.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I love the idea of learning. It's great to learn, and it's great to discover. And some of James Wan's early stuff, like a lot of people, there's a lot of it some people haven't seen. A lot of a lot of early horror stuff that you don't necessarily hear about. You find out later through collectors or through Blu-ray, or like that's kind of what VHS did.
Yep.
That's what home video did. It allowed stuff to have a second life after a theatrical release. So it's fun to see that kind of continue with collectors and collector groups and fans and stuff. So yeah, I love that.
This has been absolutely fun, man. I've been,
blast.
I was trying to think of how to culminate some of it. I have ever interviews, and I'm sure you have the same, where you're trying to wrap around like, how the fuck do I make this collectively cohesive without jumbling around? Because I have so much that I want to touch on. I have so much I want to mention. But I thought it would be fun, as far as with it being the spooky season, and maybe people being introduced to something new that they don't know, or something that is holy shit. I remember seeing that cover, and I need to go back and check out Candyman or Amityville Horror. I love it, man. This has been absolutely so awesome. I appreciate the time. You're a busy guy.
Yeah, well, listen, again, I'm happy we got to connect, and just touching on what we were talking about earlier. It's been such a fucking trying time in the world the last few days. And I think it's important that people, not only pray and think about the people that are going through all this, but really appreciate, how lucky we are living, in North America, and man, it's a tough time, but yeah, I'm glad we got to connect. I'm glad we got to chat, and I've been following you for a long time. We always chat, and it's great to finally, and hopefully one day we can actually be in the same space together, and
absolutely
maybe go to a con or something together. It'd be really, really fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I wholeheartedly agree. I can't wait. It'll happen. We're gonna get it out in the universe. It's another thing with horror too, I think, is, and you kind of touching on, the absolute tragedy that's going on in the world, is it's one of those, kind of coping mechanisms to where it's, it kind of makes us realize, where we walk away from some of these things and realize that there is everyday terrible shit that's going on. And, just one of those things to maybe get our mind away from something for a second, or, to be appreciative too. So, I love that you bring that up, and anything that that we can do, or if you find links or different things as far as donations or whatnot, I mean, certainly send them my way, and just be nice. Be kind.
I think what it comes down to is, like, when you are scrambling and you're running around and you're frustrated, just zoom it back and be kind to people around you, and just try to spread love and be understanding and loving to the people immediately around you, and that, I really do believe, maybe I'm naive, but I really do believe that has an effect, and it just spreads and it spreads. But it's really a responsibility of every person to kind of think of that. And we always, most of the time we don't, but it's, but I'm glad we got to spend this time together. It was fun, man.
Hell yeah. Absolutely. I so appreciate it. Dude, this is awesome.
All right.
This is so fucking awesome. All right, man. You take care.
You too.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you soon, my man. I'll be seeing you, catching you at some point here.
For sure, bud. Take care, man.
All right, see ya.
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.